Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The purpose of this session is to gather in the reporting from the Breakout series 1 and 2. Let's deal with the first session, which is building supply-side capacities.
And the first thing is trade is a cross-cutting issue. And that means you cannot concentrate on just simply one sector, but you need a broad approach. For example, it was mentioned that trade finance is a big problem. High domestic interest rates are often a problem for exporters and do stop production from developing and exporting, do stop exporters from improving their market shares. So with regard to finance, we also said domestic institutions play an important role and donors cannot substitute the government. Another area to be covered are capacities, and that is not just technological capacities with regard to different production areas, but also administrative capacities. And of course, it has been highlighted that infrastructure plays an important role to support trade and exports. Second, we said there is a need to adapt our support, aid for trade support, to the specific situation of countries and regions. We also said South cooperation is an area where trade promotion and trade and exports should be increased and is an area where aid should go. The third issue we identified is donor coherence. It has been said that it's very demanding for countries to live with different donors and different forms they have to fulfill and different requests and different conditionalities to put on. Fourth point, we had a discussion, are we really serious? The question has been put whether donors really mean it, that they want to support their competitors. Because if you say we promote exports in developing countries, of course at the same time this means increased competition for developed countries, for industrialized countries. But it has been mentioned that growing markets should be in the interest of everybody, so that this competition somehow at the end leads to increased efficiency and to gains for every country. Fifth point, fifth challenge, how do we achieve sustainability? We said we should not, what we don't need is single projects, but projects have to be based on export strategies. It means what we need to achieve is to build the capacities in the countries themselves, in developing countries themselves. And it had also been mentioned that the export sector is embedded in the local economy. So if we look at export promotion and production capacities in export, we should not concentrate only on the aspect of exports, but look at the overall situation, because this sector is embedded in the local economy.
Anyway, our session this morning, Unleashing the Power of Enterprise. We looked at the barriers and then the actions that we needed to take to overcome them. The first thing we identified was that actually one of the barriers is not an absence of entrepreneurial people. Developing countries are full of entrepreneurial and innovative people. So that is not the problem. The problem is that the correct business environment is absent. There isn't a legal framework in terms of company formation, in terms of competition regulation, and in terms of just general governance issues, and also access to finance. The raising of capital is not clear-cut and straightforward. The use of intellectual property to lever value and reduce risk is not widely known by SMEs. There are several misconceptions about the role of intellectual property, some thinking it's the be-all and end-all of all the issues, others thinking that actually it's quite a small component of success, when in fact, as with everything else that's said this morning, there is a balance and it changes according to circumstances. Another barrier is that we always think about high-tech. We're always thinking about, well, how do we get into the biotechnology business, the electronics business, and so on. Another thing that's missing is entrepreneurship built into education and culture. We don't teach entrepreneurship. We don't teach setting up businesses. And we don't actually use successful entrepreneurs as role models. Government does too much and knows too little. I'm not talking about corruption. I'm talking about government that sets in place regulations for every activity and has no idea what they do and how they work. So it knows too little and it tries to do too much. And one of the things that came up this morning was the shortage of technically trained people and career opportunities for them. What are the actions? We need to create accessible sources of finance. And that means alternative sources to other than the major banks. It's venture capitalists. It's also the development banks. And there are reforms that can be done. Although it didn't come up in the session, I heard that Poland created a new fast-track capital raising scheme in its stock exchange only a month ago. So those are all things to look at. We do need to ensure that we provide the right understanding of the use of IP, easy access to the rights and their use. By that I mean not going around telling everybody the standard intellectual property model is the one for you, but actually encouraging people to understand the options available and make the decisions. If patenting isn't for you, don't patent. Just use what is essential. Another factor, there are many successful research departments in developing countries with little access to the sort of people who can help them move on to turning that into the wheel. We should also recognise and support the innovative potential of the other industries. Really go out and encourage creative industries in design, in software, in the arts, to make a benefit of your cultural uniqueness and sell that to the world, and also innovate in the service industries. We need to build enterprise into the educational system. Right at the very beginning, we need to teach children that being an entrepreneur, being a risk taker, is actually a good way of life. We need to carry that through in terms of our technical colleges, our scientific education, and our business schools. This is not a matter for lawyers, it is a matter for business people.
But the purpose was to move up the value chain. Nobody was wanting to move down, but it's maybe important to state that that is the goal. And in considering how to move up your value chain, we thought cost, quality, and delivery were maybe so essential and so basic that people tend to overlook them. We talked about a lot of other things, but we didn't actually talk very much about that. But everybody agreed, actually, these were three central. Who should do what? And this generated quite a lot of debate. In moving up the value chain, what is the role of these companies? The companies who actually have the products that are being sold. How are they meant to do things? Then, how are governments meant to support them? And there was quite a lot of debate on that. And finally, experts. And we all like to hate experts because they cost a lot of money and their deliveries are uncertain, etc. But there's no doubt that they play a major role. And all of this combined in an overwhelming sense that the way forward is PPP, public-private partnerships. If you want to move up your value chain, what do your consumers actually want to buy? And the immediate reaction is, well, you know, consumers are looking at price. So when you're going up the value chain, you need to make sure you're competitive. But there were a number of very strong arguments that that is not necessarily the only determining factor. And there was actually a very large debate on gender issues here and the role of women in the marketplace. Not only are they increasingly in the workforce, they therefore have increasingly large amounts of money to spend, become a dominant consumer group, and their main concern is not necessarily only price. And this brought us to the issue of ethical consumerism. And there were questions here about fair trade and ethical trade. People being concerned, how was this good or this service produced? And is it good for me to consume it? Questions. But the final thing that everybody thought was incredibly important, but there was not a consensus on how to do it, is the mapping of market data. At the end of the day, you can't move up the value chain unless you know what the markets want, when they want it, in what quantities. And therefore, at the end of the day, the mapping of the market data has to be a crucial issue. Many thanks.